The death toll from 2 bombings near Kabul airport has reached almost 100. At least 70 Afghans were killed in the crowds, while the U.S. says 13 of its soldiers are among the dead, with more wounded. The Taliban say they lost fighters in the suicide blasts as well. The Afghan branch of the so-called Islamic State has claimed responsibility. Now the Pentagon is warning of further IS terror.
Shock at Kabul hospital as multiple injured people were brought in for treatment. Western nations had warned of a terror attack on the thousands hoping to be airlifted out of the Taliban-controlled city. Now it had happened. People were standing at the airport gate when the blast happened. The ambulances are carrying injured and dead. My cousin was wounded. It was time for evening prayers when the explosion happened. I saw about 70 vehicles carrying the injured to hospital. The explosion was outside the airport. It came from the canal. Just after the first explosion, across the city of Kabul, smoke could be seen above the airport. News then came of a second explosion. The Pentagon confirmed that one was near the Abbey Gate entrance to the airport, the other a short distance away, close by a hotel. People attended to the wounded on site as vehicles arrived to take them to hospital. As darkness fell, planes continued to take off from inside the airport complex. This attack only emphasises how urgent, how necessary the evacuation effort is.
Let's get the latest on the situation. We can speak to journalist Franz Marty in Kabul. Franz, we know the death toll from Thursday's attack keeps rising. The hospitals are also overwhelmed treating the wounded. Can you bring us up to date on the latest?
Yes, the latest casualty figures are in fact at least 90 killed and at least 150 wounded. Most of them Afghans, of course, but as you mentioned, also like by now apparently 13 US soldiers. The exact details are still unclear. For example, yesterday the Pentagon said that the first explosion at the gate was a suicide bomber that was there at the checkpoint at the control to enter the gate. However, the second explosion is still not clear what exactly it was caused by. And the self-declared Islamic State, who took responsibility, only spoke about one attacker and released a photo of one attacker. So the second explosion is still somewhat unclear.
Franz, we're seeing that the Pentagon is warning of more attacks. What are you hearing about further threats?
Indeed, there have been already yesterday night warnings that more attacks could come. It is always hard to say in such instances how severe these warnings were, because usually in Kabul there have always been some threat warnings, and after attack it's often not clear whether the warnings about following attacks might be more out of fear than clear intelligence. However, I spoke to a source with access to insurgents today in the morning, and he said that there are still operatives of the self-declared Islamic State in the city that at least has the intention to conduct further attacks. Whether and when they will be able to try this, to actually try to conduct further attacks, that is hard to say, and remains to be seen.
How have these devastating attacks affected the evacuation operations at the airport?
The U.S. officials, also U.S. President, announced that evacuation will continue. The Pentagon has, though, announced that there will be further security measures, more standoff from the gates. So I have heard planes today in the morning. So it seems to be continuing. And given that it was just during the night and now morning, it is hard to say. It has not yet become clear to what extent evacuation operations are affected.
Almost 100 people have died. Many have been wounded. Franz, how have people in Kabul, Afghans there, been responding to these terror attacks?
Tragically, one thing to note here is that the people of Kabul, they are accustomed to like horrible suicide attacks. So it's not that this comes like out of the blue. Of course, there's outrage. For example, there's outrage that media outlets begin now to focus on the killed U.S. service members, despite the much higher toll among Afghans, which kind of reinforces the feeling among Afghans that Afghan lives don't matter and that it is only about the foreigner, so that this attack is only now getting that much attention because U.S. soldiers were killed and not because of the much higher toll among Afghan civilians.
Journalist Franz Marty speaking to us there from Kabul. Thank you.